You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, so you know what that means, Women's Wednesday. Today we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Sara Erzen, and she is a breast cancer survivor. She is a mother, and she has a pretty remarkable story. So, hey, Sara, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Fantastic.
Perfect.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, I know a little bit about your story, but this is really a chance for you to really, get this out to our many listeners who may be experiencing, treatments right now, undergoing that, or maybe have family members that have gone through it as well. So I feel like a lot of people can really relate to this. So I just want to give you the floor and just to really tell more about your story.
Sure. I was diagnosed back in, it was November of 2013.
Mm-hmm.
2013. My husband and I had just gotten married the year before. We had found out that we were expecting a daughter, and I had noticed a couple months prior to that I found a lump. And I brought it up a couple times. I had no family history. I was only 35, so I was what was considered low risk to no risk at that time. So there were really no precautions or really acknowledgement of what was going on. Up until about the sixth obstetrician appointment where I said, this is really bothering me. I think we need to have a second look. And it, long story short, came back as stage 3C invasive ductal carcinoma, which is a cancer inside the ducts of the breast themselves, and it had spread to my axillary lymph nodes. So it was very aggressive. It was very fast-moving. So we're lucky that we found it when we did. And I definitely think, being that I was 21 weeks pregnant when I was diagnosed, I still credit Adeline to this day for saving my life.
Oh, that's incredible. And she's how old now? She
will be 6 on next Friday.
Oh my gosh. Well, happy early birthday to her.
Yeah.
So you said that you had found this lump. Now, was it something that was kind of painful and you just kind of looked in the mirror one day and thought, oh, that feels funny, or is it something that you were able to see? It sounds like really a self-check that you did.
Yeah, it was. I was showering and I felt it and kind of thought to myself, okay, well, this could just be dense tissue. This could just be nothing. I'll bypass it for now. And I kept feeling concerned because it wasn't going away. It was getting bigger. And then once I started experiencing, they say that you don't experience pain with anything that's malignant, which I don't think is true, because I had a lot of pain, but it was growing so large that it was affecting the nerves in my chest wall.
Oh.
Because it was, for a breast tumor, it was pretty sizable. I had 2 of them, actually, when all was said and done, and they were both over 5 centimeters.
Oh, gosh, that's a pretty good size. And, I mean, as far as, like, the pain goes, too, I can't even imagine that. Now, let me ask you this. Like, how did you feel? I mean, that's a really broad and kind of a ridiculous question to ask, but, like, just what sort of thoughts were going through your head at that time?
And that's a really legitimate question, because you don't know until you're in it, right? I went into fact mode. It was so weird when we first found out. Of course, all this stuff always happens on a Thursday or Friday, so you get to stew over the whole weekend. That's the way it always seems to go. We had the biopsy on a Thursday, and my husband was at a conference that Friday. I had sent my oldest daughter to school, and I was there with my youngest daughter, and that was when I got the call with the results. And I remember taking a pen and a piece of paper, and I wrote down everything that the doctor told me, and I said, okay, well, what's next? And he just kind of paused, and he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yep, I'm fine. What do we do now?
Yeah.
And then after I hung up the phone with him, I called my parents, and as soon as I heard my dad's voice, I crumbled. It was the first time I audibly had to say, it's cancer. And then everything flooded in, all the questions. What about the baby? What about me? Can we wait to do treatment? Do we have to start now? What's going to happen? You know, what about the kids? And that whole weekend, I remember just staring at my 2 children, and not even, you know, to mention the fact that I had one growing inside of me, but I just kept looking at them thinking, oh my God, what if I don't see the other side of this? What are they going to do? How are they going to grow up? It was so overwhelming just in that 48-hour period. And with anybody that has a cancer diagnosis, you get that initial shock where the rug is completely jerked from under you. But then you get the plan, you sit down, you figure out what your options are, and then you kind of go into go mode where you face it and you say, okay, there's no other choice. I've got this. I got to do it.
And now I know that you had touched on the fact that you didn't have a history of breast cancer at all.
No, no.
Now, when you were going to see an OBGYN, I mean, obviously as a woman that you have like yearly appointments and stuff like that. So were you actively still going to appointments, or had you not been in a while?
Nope. I had all my regular appointments. In fact, we were trying to get pregnant for Adeline. And so I was up to date on all of that. But because of my age and, you know, I'm hoping that it shifts for future because of the prevalence of breast cancer. I'm hoping that the diagnostic requirements change because women are younger and younger. The standard sort of now is, you know, 40 and up, you get a mammogram. Well, mammograms don't even catch in time. They help, but they're not the crucial catch, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I was up to date for my age, for where I was, because according to many things, statistically, I was normal, and it was probably the furthest thing from my radar for that to be something, especially having zero history at all.
Yeah, and that's scary, and the fact that something like a mammogram that you would think would catch something like that just doesn't. And I mean, relating back to my mom, so I had actually moved down to Georgia from Michigan about 2 years ago, and it was when I had started a new job. I was in the job for, oh my gosh, I think it was like 3 weeks, and I got a call that my mom was diagnosed with cervical cancer, and I completely lost it. I am not one to ever really get emotional or cry, especially at work, especially in front of people that, you know, I had just really started working with.
Right.
And it broke me down to a point. Oh my gosh, I'm going to try not to get emotional. But finding it out, just knowing that we really don't have cancer survivors on my mom's side of the family. And I know that my grandma's youngest sister, she had a lump that did become malignant, and she ended up just saying, you know what, do a complete mastectomy, get rid of all of it. I don't care. Don't just remove the lump, get rid of all of it.
Yeah.
And she survived it, but we carry the BRCA gene. So
Yes.
it's very scary. And for me, you know, frequently going to the doctor and getting these chest exams and these tests done, just because, like, sometimes there are no signs. And for your case, I mean, good thing that I guess it's bad to say, but good thing that you did feel some sort of discomfort, because that's what really caught it. And from the sounds of it, you caught it at a good time, or it sounds like it did metastasize fairly fast, but you said at what stage that they caught it at?
It was 3C. And the irony, the pregnancy made it far more aggressive because it was what's called a hormone receptor positive variant of breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, my body was producing hormones like crazy to grow a baby, and along with the baby, the cancer was growing just as quickly, if not quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And I did find out eventually that I didn't have the BRCA gene exclusively. They knew that I have a variant of some kind, but it's so rare that they didn't have a control to compare it to. So they've basically taken my genetic testing, filed it, and when somebody matches it, they can say, okay, this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
The way my oncologist explained it to me was that my genes are like a library, and there's a book out of place in one of the shelves. They just can't figure out which one. So for my daughter,
way to put it.
My daughter is 17, going to be coming up on her 17th birthday. She's getting to that point where those things are going to start being a necessity for her to get looked at as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that fear where you kind of have that in your rear view.
Yeah, and it just always kind of sits in the back of my mind, like, I do frequent breast exams just because I don't know, and it scares me because, I mean, my mom was fortunate enough that they caught it very early on, that she did not have to go through radiation or chemotherapy. I just remember talking to her, and she was telling me, she was like, yeah, I was in the doctor's office, and when they told me, and she was just like, okay, well, yeah, I'm a firefighter paramedic. I don't really have time for chemo or radiation. So, like, what else is there?
Yeah.
And it's just crazy because, especially with her line of work, like, she's incredibly active. And so it was like, yeah, I don't really have time for cancer or the treatment. So, like, what else is there?
So we're going to have to do something else.
Yeah. And thankfully, like, they caught it so early on. They did 2 different procedures. So she had worked for an OBGYN for like 10 years. And back during those times, what they did was they just did a complete hysterectomy. They took everything out. And that's what she said. She was like, look, like, I have 3 kids. I'm in my 40s. Like, I'm done. Just take it all out. That's fine. And what she had learned is that they actually keep the uterus in now because it acts as a barrier, so the cancer actually doesn't spread to the other organs. So
they did that with me.
Oh, okay.
For 2 reasons. That was one, and the other was because I had just given birth. It was very vascular and dangerous for bleeding. My platelets were low due to already being in treatment. So they did what was called an oophorectomy, where they just took my fallopian tubes and my ovaries so that the hormone production completely stopped. In fact, they put me on oral chemo for I was on it for about 4 years. That completely shut down estrogen production altogether, so that there's nothing. The hormone receptors had nothing to bind to. When they can bind, then that is when they can grow. That's when what the cancer feeds on. That's what it likes. If those receptors have cells that they can bind to, then it can grow.
Okay, so as far as just like reproductive organs go, they were like, we're gonna just bite the bullet now and make sure that this doesn't end up spreading. Then is that okay? Awesome.
Yeah, that was because of the genetic findings as well. So they just did that right when they delivered Adeline.
Oh, gosh.
I was diagnosed at 21 weeks. When we went in for our appointment, I said, can we just wait until she's viable? Can I try 9 weeks? We can deliver her and she doesn't have to go through this. And they said no. They said it's very aggressive. If we wait, there may not be a her and there may not be a you.
Oh.
So we found something I didn't know, that at 26 weeks, the chemotherapy no longer crosses the placental barrier. So I had my port placed 5 weeks later, 26 weeks, started adriamycin and Cytoxan, which is also called the Red Devil. It's a pretty, from what I understand, a pretty significantly intense regimen. So I did that. That went from December to February. She was born March 6th, and then 2 weeks later I started dose-dense chemo again. Did that until May.
Gosh.
And had my subsequent other surgeries after that, then radiation. And yeah, it was a pretty eventful year.
Very intense, and we will definitely come back to this, but we're going to take a quick break, but everybody stay tuned. We will be back after these short messages.
This is Dr. Susan Blank, host of Detailing Addiction on America's Web Radio. Please join us at 4 p.m. on Tuesday afternoons.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
If your health insurance premium is more than your mortgage, Ellen Deal with Ideal Solutions is here to help. Whether you're a small business owner, individual, family, or baby boomer, email maga45cag@gmail.com and I'll respond with 3 easy questions to help you determine if you can get away from Obamacare. As a 20-year veteran of the insurance industry, I'm here to help with all your insurance needs. Email Ellen Deal at maga45cag@gmail.com.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday and happy Women's Wednesday. So we are back with Sara Erzen and talking more about her journey with breast cancer and overcoming that while being pregnant with her daughter. So, Sara, now, as far as the treatment goes, you were touching on that a little bit. So obviously, you went through chemo and you also went through radiation. So
yes.
For those that don't know the difference, can you speak to that?
The difference between chemo and radiation?
Correct.
Yes. So I did 4 rounds. There's all different kinds of chemotherapy cocktails, and they're all specific to whatever your oncotype is, whatever your cancer type is, your stage, etc. So mine was dose-dense, which meant that I did kind of like if you picture like a can of concentrated juice, instead of dumping it and mixing it and having it gradually over time, I had the concentrated version every 2 weeks in a short set of time, kind of to throw the most aggressive thing they could at it. So I had dose-dense chemotherapy, and I did that twice, 2 different kinds of drugs. I don't know if one attacked one aspect and one attacked the other, but after that I had my surgery. And the reason they wanted to do that was what is called neoadjuvant therapy, which means they need to shrink the tumor before they can actually operate on it.
Okay.
So we did that, and then after that was all said and done, I ended up with the 35 rounds of radiation. And what the radiation does is it kind of, the way I had it best explained to me is it's kind of like if you blow a dandelion seed, and that's in your body. Picture that in a chest wall. The radiation is kind of like clearing up anything that could have settled and landed anywhere else within that affected area. So the chemo kind of is like it treats the field for the weeds, and then the radiation goes in, and any kind of other little seeds that could have detached and spread, that's what it tries to wipe that out.
Okay. I love that that whole dandelion aspect. That actually really puts it into perspective. So as scary as that is, but I mean it's really attacking all of that. And obviously this process took a while. You said this was 35 weeks?
It was actually from, gosh, I have to remember now. I went every single day for 6 weeks for radiation.
Mm-hmm.
So chemotherapy you do every 2 weeks. You go, I think I had an infusion for about 7 hours each time, 6 or 7 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then the radiation, you have to go every single day at the same exact time. You go in, they actually put tiny, tiny little tattoos on the precise places where the radiation has to hit you. For me, it was kind of a challenge because my cancer was on my left side, so they have to make sure that they avoid any parts of, where your heart is.
Mm-hmm.
They have to also do minimal damage to your lung because being where your breast is, your lung is obviously in the radiation field. So I went every single day for just over a month. It was from October to the beginning of December, if I remember correctly. It might have, it's jumbled for me to remember, but it was in the fall. And I remember my husband was working at McLaren with your mom at the time, actually. And he was able to walk down from his department and meet me at radiation because I'd have to bring the baby. I would take the kids to school, pack the baby up, go for radiation. He would sit in the waiting room with her, and then I would leave and go back home. It was kind of like, sort of like life went back to normal. I just had to go do this thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was kind of a trip.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. You had mentioned tattoos. So were those like permanent tattoos that you still have, or?
Yeah, they're just like, they're as tiny as like a pinhead. They're just like little dots.
Okay.
But it was something that they could use to align it up the same each time.
Okay, gotcha. So
and it took about, 20 minutes, half an hour each time.
Okay. And now, just to rewind, were you going through treatments while you were still pregnant then?
Yes.
Okay.
I started at 26 weeks and delivered her at 39 weeks. Probably could have went to term, but it all needed to line up with how my treatment went. And she was completely healthy. She never had to go to NICU. She
Wow.
was one of my biggest babies. She was over 8 pounds. And I had no hair when I delivered her. And as soon as they pulled her out, she had the most hair of any of my kids.
Wow.
She had this thick head of hair. So as soon as I saw that, I remember looking at my husband, and we were like, yep, it didn't touch her. She's good. She's good.
And, I mean, being pregnant is one thing, but going through cancer treatments, having that at the same time, like, how did that work with the doctors? And, I mean, obviously, like, you have your OBGYN for your baby girl, and then you have your oncologist for the cancer side of it. So, what did was there any sort of relationship between those two doctors? Like, were they both at Sparrow, or?
Yes, we actually we moved our treatment to Henry Ford in Detroit.
Okay.
So my team was all under a big umbrella. I had a neonatal specialist. We got to see her like 3 times a week sometimes that monitored that. I had a geneticist. I had an oncologist, a team of 2 different hematologists. We had our breast surgeon, and then, of course, her OB, and they all communicated with one another.
Oh, fantastic.
Which was, that was one of the biggest things we needed to put our minds at ease.
Mm-hmm.
But they were wonderful. When she was delivered, there were quite a handful of people in that operating room.
Yeah, and I guess I'm really curious, like, what different obstacles and I mean, say what you can, because this is obviously kind of a touchy question, but like, were there any like scares or difficult obstacles that you faced being pregnant while going through these treatments?
I look back on it, and sometimes I wonder if I've blocked things, like from experiencing trauma. If I don't know if you were to ask my family members if they would say, well, no, it was a lot scarier than that. But for me, I feel like I almost had it lucky, or I was almost lucky with it. Almost like the baby. I don't want to say that she was a barrier to a lot of it, but she really forced me to probably take a lot better care of myself and not push myself as hard as I would have if I weren't nurturing her to make sure she was okay. I was extremely blessed in the fact that the only real thing I had, I never got, I never, you hear the horror stories of how sick people get with chemo. I didn't have any of those really bad physical symptoms. I didn't really throw up a lot. I would get really bad headaches. I would have contractions after infusions. A lot of times we would religiously watch Wheel of Fortune and time my contractions, and I was still contracting by the time Wheel of Fortune was over. We had to go back just to have her monitored, but we never had to do that. There was one day that I remember distinctly, and it was for an appointment that we had to go to. I don't remember why, but I was sitting in the OB office, and I was bald at that time. I was hugely pregnant. I was exhausted. And I just remember looking around at all the other healthy moms and knowing that was my last shot. Like, this was going to be the final time I would experience this. And I started to go down that why me road. And then I thought about all the people that I was able to meet and connect with because of what her and I went through. And you kind of have to, you get out of that mindset pretty quickly. One thing that was a challenge was watching my daughter, my oldest daughter, navigate through. She was in 5th grade at the time, which is hard enough anyway.
Still very young, but obviously old enough to understand what was going on.
Right. And she was very stoic about it. She was a very good source of strength for me. But knowing that she was enduring that was pretty hard. And my other daughter was only 4 at the time, and they say, oh, well, she probably doesn't remember, she's resilient, but it affected her a lot too. So that part was hard.
I can only imagine. I mean, this was only last year that my mom was diagnosed, so I was 25 and knew very well what was going on. My sister is 3 years younger. My brother is 7 years younger. So we all knew exactly what was going on. But definitely want to touch more on your family and friends in that support system. But we're going to take a quick break. But stay tuned, everybody. This is Women's Wednesday with Taylor.
Want to give your family or loved one the perfect gift? Then go online and check out the TornadoBodyDryer.com. I love mine and the warm heat air massage it gives me after my shower. The Tornado Body Dryer is super. You'll love it, and you'll love having one in your shower.
This is Ron Camacho, host of the Business Hour, on Fridays from 10 to 11 a.m. Join me as I talk with passionate professionals on a program that profiles the best businesses, business practices, and fascinating business professionals to get an insider view of how America works.
Okay, folks, let's have some fun on America's Web Radio. We love idioms, and we want yours. So send it in, go into our homepage, look under the flag at the banner, and click on idioms, and send us your idiom today. Thanks.
You can keep your doctor, you can keep your plan, and every family will save thousands of dollars a year. I'm Ellen Deal, and if you've been hurt by the Affordable Care Act, you can email MAGA45CAG@gmail.com to see if we can help. Small business owners, individuals, families, and baby boomers, email MAGA45CAG@gmail.com for 3 easy questions to determine if you can get away from Obamacare. I'm a 20-year veteran of the insurance industry and here to help you for all your insurance needs.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
All right, everybody, we are back. My name is Taylor, and this is Women's Wednesday, all things women. So wanted to just let everybody know that this is a new show, and I am a new host, if you can't already tell. So if you have any ideas for a show, or you have a pretty remarkable story, whether that's health-related, workplace, whatever, as long as it's women-related, I want to hear from you. So go ahead and send me an email. That's taylor@americaswebradio.com. So back to Miss Sara here, and we were touching on how your kids were handling this. Now, I'm curious to hear more about, like, family members. I mean, hearing my mom had cervical cancer, I'm her oldest daughter, and I like to think that I'm her best friend.
Yeah.
So me finding out, I had done so much research and knowing how to be a good support system, and what everything kept saying was just be strong because she's going to need it. And so anytime I was on the phone with her or I was with her in person, it took everything in me not to just burst into tears, because it's like, that's my mom, and I frankly don't know what I would do without her. Like, people say that they're close with their mom, but I talk to mine every single day, whether that's text or social media. I adore her so much. And so I mean, when it comes to your friends and family, how did they take it? I mean, you mentioned your dad, and that was really the first time that you were like, had to say, Dad, I have cancer. Tell me more about that.
Well, I look back on it now, and they say that the patient is the warrior. They say that the patient is the one that fights the battle, and they have the strength. And it literally really shadows the family too much. The fact that I can look back and think to myself that my mom and my dad and my husband were still strong enough to never let on to me that they were ever really scared.
Mm-hmm.
They were so busy making sure I didn't feel fear. I had no idea how much my mom cried. I had no idea, the toll that it had on my dad. I had no idea how many times my husband probably cried in the shower or, on his way to work while he was still providing for our family and keeping it together enough to make sure I got to where I needed to be on time, and that our bills were paid and we didn't lose our house, and all the awful things financially that can even happen to somebody through something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents, touching back to that day that I called my dad, my mom and him were in Florida, and they had just gotten down there. I don't think they'd even been down there 3 days. And they used to have an RV that they would drive, sort of cross-country to get down there.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom said, after I hung up the phone with them, he went out and was pulling up stakes, and they were there within 24 hours.
Oh.
And I remember my mom and my dad both, I don't remember what they said specifically, but I was given that feeling like, we will not leave you. We're in this. We will take care of you. You guys don't worry about anything. And they did. They came in and made a makeshift room in our basement, and I don't think they went home for 6 months, except maybe to get a few things that they needed. And James was my husband. Was obviously, I look back on it now, and I never had to question if he would be there to drive me to an infusion, an appointment, nothing. And he juggled all of that to make sure that it happened for us.
Good.
So I think family members are really the ones that bear the brunt of it, because when you're a patient, you go in and do what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have to rest, you have to rest. If you have to, life doesn't stop for anybody, but it really does stop for caregivers, and I don't think they get enough credit for going through something like that.
Yeah, and as far as, family goes, and it's what you went through is stressful, so I can imagine there were probably some times where emotions ran wild. Obviously, you were pregnant and going through treatments, and if you got angry, like the saying is you take it out on those that you love the most because you know that they'll always
That's
be
your
there.
safe place.
And I am so guilty of doing that. That's why, like with my mom and I, we have such a great relationship because she's the same way. I call it my Sour Patch Kid syndrome. So it's like first I'm really sour, but like you just got to give me time to cool down and then I'll be sweet. So
yes, and then you're vulnerable.
And so maybe there were times where you're just like, gosh, like my mom and dad are here, they're in the basement, like they're just, all over this and that. Like I need a break. I mean, did you have a good friend support system as well?
Yes, my friends. One of the things that I can't even describe, and I think it was because I was transparent in sharing my story. I was transparent in what we were going through. I was eager to meet anybody and everybody that had been in the same situation as me, and because of that, I was able to make a few really close friends that were not only, I had my good friends, my lifelong friends, obviously, but I also had friends that were kind of going through the same thing I was at different stages. So having that was a huge support. Even like I said, my friends that were already good friends of mine were a great support. Some people pull away a little bit because it freaks them out. They don't know what to say, so they don't say anything. They don't know what to do, so they don't do anything. And it can upset you a little bit, but you can't stay there because that's just their form of processing that, and that's fine too. You really do find out who your true friends are. And I was really lucky, just, especially because of my parents and my husband, like I said. It meshed, it went well. We were together a lot, but I think we all kind of knew what the could be was. Yeah. So that made a difference.
Now, were there any certain words that you just did not want to hear, or if any at all? And then what were certain things that you just really needed to be affirmed on?
So it's pretty cliche and classic when you're first diagnosed, and I don't know if it's people just trying to comfort you, but I don't know if they go into Google and try to figure out whatever other than chemo, especially when you're pregnant. Like, so many people were horrified to think that I would actually subject my baby to that. But to that, I wanted to say to them, listen, if I don't, like, either I'm going to die or she is. Like, we've got to do something. Yeah. I'm trusting what these physicians are telling me. The frustrating thing for me, and I see it a lot even with people that I know going through it now, people want to say, well, there's no cure because if there's a cure, but they just want to make money. You need to do this, try, breaking a tree branch in half and boiling it and, sipping this tea. Like, the most ridiculous things you can ever think of. And sometimes you just want to say, listen, let me trust my process. Let me trust what I am going through and being told to do. Don't tell me that, there's a cure out there. They're just trying to make money. Don't say discouraging things like that, because it's almost like, or people will say, I've done my research and I know that, if you have this or that the cancer won't grow in your body. But the thing of it is, and the thing that I likened it to the most was, when you have cancer, your house is on fire, literally. And you're not going to take time to read a manual or to do all of the other things that could be suggested before you put that fire out. You're going to get your family out and put water on it as soon as you can to try to fight that fire. You're not going to just go, well, maybe I'll just try this first. You throw everything at it so you don't lose everything.
Naturally, yeah.
So, and unless people experience that, they really, good intentions or not, don't realize that.
Yeah, so it sounds like, when people would try to be the doctor, be the expert. Now, were these people those that you were acquaintances with? Were these family members? Were these friends? Were these people that you may have met along the way in and out of doctor's offices? Or tell me more about that.
A little bit of all of that, really. And those that were close to me, they had good intentions. And I think, again, that's a knee-jerk reaction of people that don't know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if sometimes it's okay just to say, you know what, this probably is going to suck, but I'm going to be here on your rough days. It's all right.
Yeah.
You don't have to, you don't have to be a hero to anybody. You don't have to find the words. Sometimes there aren't any. You know, a lot of my friends, I remember people just showing up to our house with meals and something as simple as like a loaf of bread and a jar of jam, just to come and say, listen, I really don't have words, but here. Like, any
Gestures.
small tokens of comfort that are either unspoken, that don't address the disease directly, but address the person instead, that's extremely comforting.
Mm-hmm.
I know my cousin had a blanket made, and it's funny because I have not slept without that blanket since the day I got it, ever. It travels with me everywhere, everything. And it's just one of those fleece tie blankets. But her daughter at the time was in preschool, and there were like 30 kids that each prayed over this blanket, and they all used their little hands to tie the knots of this blanket.
That just gave me chills.
It brought
oh
so
my
much
goodness.
comfort, so much meaning. Yeah. I've never been without it. And it's little things like that. It doesn't have to be major. Sometimes just a phone call to just say, you need to vent about anything? You know, do you not want to talk about cancer? How's your day going otherwise? It's little things like that. But mainly, don't be afraid. It's kind of, it's almost like a death. If somebody dies in acquaintance's family or somebody that you know, you're uncomfortable. You don't know what to say. But try to step out of that discomfort to just be you and be who you were to them before it all happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I feel like when certain things like this that are just traumatic, people are just like, oh, you're just, the cancer becomes a part of you, and
yes, your identity almost.
It's just a part of you. Yeah, it's not your entire identity, and so it's like, oh yeah, Sarah, she's the one with breast cancer and she's pregnant. And it's like, no,
yep.
Like there's way more to me. And if you were to meet maybe a girlfriend for lunch that you hadn't seen in a while, and it's like, oh my gosh, like I talk about this all the time. Like, can we please talk about something else? Because there's more to you than just that. And
yes.
I'm pretty curious, and because I honestly have no idea, but did the doctors give you any sort of, I guess, percentages or like chances of like, hey, this could happen, especially being pregnant? I mean, when people would make comments about, oh, I can't believe you'd go through chemo while you're pregnant, like how dare you do that? So I guess, what are the risks with that?
To her, it's strange to say, because we were told it was fairly minimal, that it was safe. And as they're telling me that, I'm going, oh my God, in my 2 other pregnancies, I was scared to eat at Subway because you're not supposed to eat lunch meat. And you're telling me I can, like, put arsenic directly into my body. Cool. The statistics were fine. But the other thing is, too, there haven't been many women, or there hadn't been many women at that point that had really gone through that. There was just a new network starting called Hope for Two, which was a doctor in Texas had kind of collaborated a study on a small group of women that had a similar prognosis, similar, sort of situation. And so statistically, it was kind of a, well, this is sort of what could happen. Probably not, but we've got to kind of go with it and see. Mm-hmm. We were told she shouldn't have any developmental delays. We were told that she would likely be fine, and, she was. But we were kind of pioneers in it at that point.
Yeah.
It sounds so weird to say with it just being 6 years ago, but the prevalence wasn't as high, so there was really nothing to compare it to.
Yeah, totally understand. And I mean, being a pioneer in it, I'm sure that that's not a very common thing to both be pregnant and going through something like that. So, but we are actually going to take our last break. Everybody stay tuned to hear the last bit of this segment. You won't want to miss it. This is Taylor with Women's Wednesday on America's Web Radio.
Hello, this is Michael Daly with Atlanta Healing Center. We know that addiction is a brain disease. Addiction is a family disease. Addiction is a treatable disease. We have a caring professional staff with over 30 years experience to help you and your loved ones in your recovery. You can reach us at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
If your health insurance premium is more than your mortgage, Ellen Deal with Ideal Solutions is here to help. Whether you're a small business owner, individual, family, or baby boomer, email maga45cag@gmail.com and I'll respond with 3 easy questions to help you determine if you can get away from Obamacare. As a 20-year veteran of the insurance industry, I'm here to help with all your insurance needs. Email Ellen Deal at maga45cag@gmail.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mike Karuchak. Join me and my co-host, Dr. Hal Schertz, every Thursday morning at 8 a.m. and listen to the Doctor's Lounge, where you get a private insight into the conversations that doctors have amongst themselves. Join us Thursday, 8 a.m. every week.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
All right, everybody, we are back on Women's Wednesday, and we have Sara here talking more about her journey through the battle with breast cancer. And Sara, now we were touching on family and friends, and obviously what people want to hear, or what you would want to hear, and certain things that you didn't want to hear, and obviously that was really those people that tried to be experts throughout this journey and tell you, oh, this is what you should do and this is what you shouldn't do. And then, talking about the scare of being pregnant and like those statistics and being told like, she's going to be fine. And coming out with a full head of hair, like that's just incredible. Yeah. And she's happy. She was a happy, healthy baby. I mean, has she experienced anything at all in her 6 years?
Sometimes we joke and say like it did something to her. She is so smart and witty, and she's an old soul. Like, she's been here before.
I love
but
that.
Nothing. I mean, she's hit every single benchmark for growth. She's in kindergarten. I sound like I'm bragging, but it's true. She has gotten 100% on all of her assessment tests. She's brilliant. So we joke and say, well, maybe that like gave her some kind of power or something. But every benchmark or milestone that we meet, she's actually student of the month at her school. She's having a little ceremony tomorrow. So when little things like that happen, James and I both get choked up because there was a time when, we weren't sure, and she meant the world to us. We tried for her. We prayed for her. So for these things to continue to happen, for her and I, to both beat the odds. When we were first given all of this, it was odds of about 30%, about 70% chance that it would recur, that it could spread. So, that was without throwing treatment at it and everything else.
And you said that was 70%.
Every little thing that we hit is just, it's special.
That's, yeah, I can imagine. I mean, she's a miracle baby. And
yeah, she is.
And you have 2 other daughters then, correct? Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, they're just like, I can just imagine them looking at your belly and seeing like, the hair loss. And it's touching on just the hair loss thing. Like, my mom had asked me, and she was like, I know how much you love your hair, but if I do have to go through this, would you shave your head? And I was like, that's a really tough question, Mom. I'm like, I mean, I probably would, but I would get a wig. And it's right. It's scary. So how did the girls react to seeing that massive change?
It's funny because my girls are from my first marriage, so they were at their dad's house for Christmas Eve. And being that I started chemo in the beginning of December, my hair really started falling out toward the end of December. And so on Christmas Eve, Once I had it, once your hair starts falling out from chemo, you start losing it on chunks, in chunks on your pillow, in the shower.
Ugh.
You're eating, and then all of a sudden you're like picking your hair out of your mouth, and you try to hang on and think you're one of those people that maybe won't lose it, and then you just go, you know what, no, we're done.
Mm-hmm.
So on Christmas Eve, my dad was a barber in the Navy, and he brought his clippers down, and he's like, is it time? And I said, yep, let's do it. And he shaved my head, and there were no tears. It's not for me. I know it was harder on my parents and my husband than it was for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt super empowered because I thought, you know what? You can try, but, not today, Satan. You're not taking it today. I can rock a bald head. I've got lip gloss and mascara, so that's good. But when my kids got home, I believe they got home about 4 days later. And when I answered the door, I remember Katie just being like, yep, you know what? It's fine. It's
And
gonna be fine.
Katie's your
and
oldest?
Cece was younger, so she was kind of standoffish. But she was fine eventually, too. And I got a really good wig. Once I did that, I didn't really care too much for myself personally. But when you're pregnant and you have this big belly and you're bald, you either get the sad puppy looks from people, or people just look at you like they're completely flabbergasted. They have no idea.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just easier to save explanation and look as normal as possible. But when I was at home, I never wore it. Or if I went up to school, I wasn't going to go up to school, without it, because I didn't want to draw any attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But once I had the baby, I didn't hardly wear the wig at all. I was just like, yeah, I don't care.
Oh, gosh. And, yeah, I can imagine people giving that sad puppy dog look. Because,
they do. Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
And they don't know what to say, but it's written all over their face. You already know, and you just probably look at them and smile and just kind of nod your head yup, and you know what? I am positive, and I'm going to beat this. And that was really what my mom kept saying, too, was I'm going to beat this. This is not going to take me, and oh, my gosh, I'm trying not to get choked up.
I know.
It's scary, and to really just stay so positive, that was the biggest thing, and just putting it out in the universe that you're going to beat this, Mom. You've got this. You are going to beat this, and it's going to be okay. And that was so hard, not knowing for sure, but I'm you know what? I have to. This is something I have to do. Now, talking about, obviously, there's so many different organizations and programs. Now, did you join any support groups during or even after, or are you a part of any right now?
I had a really great group that I found it was a Facebook group called Kick-Ass Cancer Moms, and it was, at that time, a group of about, I don't even know if we were at 30, of moms that were pregnant with cancer. And so that was a great support system to be able to, because you have nobody to identify with. I mean, people try to say, oh, well, my aunt had breast cancer, but, you can't really identify with a woman in her 50s who has grandkids going through it when you're raising little kids, growing a kid, being young and
very different perspectives.
You can't just not be the mom anymore. You still have to do the PTO stuff. You still have to take kids to school. Still have to get kids to dance, going through all of it. And so having moms that have those same struggles and the same pressures they put on themselves was very helpful. So that was great. And ironically, I think that group has over 300 women in it now.
Wow.
Because it's gotten so prevalent. But as far as organizations go, I really started to become a part of organizations after. One of the things that did happen for us, the Detroit Lions partnered with my health team, and Matt Stafford and his wife Kelly actually threw us a luncheon and gave my kids all kinds of stuff for Christmas.
Wow.
Really, really blessed our family, which was awesome. But after, it was the year before last, I did work with the Pink Fund, which is founded by a survivor herself in the Metro Detroit area. And all funds raised, they're a nonprofit that pay bills for women in treatment. So all the money that they raise through the Pink Fund goes to keeping women from losing their houses, putting gas in their tanks so they can get to treatment. And one of the things that they do to raise money is called Dancing with the Survivors. And I did that the year before last. And I think they raised like $1 million in that 1 year.
Wow.
Just to go to women in Metro Detroit. So it stays local. It's a great organization. And then my kids, and I can't advocate for this enough, if anybody's listening that has children and you yourself, it doesn't even have to be breast cancer. If you are a parent, a mom or a dad that is going through cancer, through treatment, if your kids have been impacted, there's an organization called Camp Kesem. It's Kesem. And it's operated nationwide. Different universities have different chapters. And a friend of mine that I was connected with through a mutual friend told me about it. And my kids have been going. I think this is going to be Katie's 7th year because she went while I was still in active treatment. And she's actually going to be a counselor in training. But it's a camp where kids get away. It's a break for parents as well. But the kids get to go and escape for a week, and they are completely able to just be who they are and not be identified with being kids that have been impacted by cancer. So it's a wonderful organization. So I advocate for that as well. But there are so many things. You just have to find them. And some people aren't being transparent, or they're not comfortable with being transparent with their story. That's okay. You don't have to divulge everything. Nobody's going to make you open any wounds or things that you don't want to, but those organizations are there to help.
It's phenomenal. And to not only have programs for those that are going through treatment or have just been told they have cancer, but it's for family and for friends, I'm sure, as well, to make sure that they have that support and that know that you're not alone in this. There are so many other people. So now you've touched on so many different aspects, but before we wrap up this show, Sara, is there any sort of message that overall you would like to provide to women both with and without cancer?
For anything, be your own advocate and trust your gut. If you feel that something isn't right, don't be lulled by any explanation that you don't trust. If you think that there is something amiss, go with it. And don't be afraid, if you do have to walk down that path, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to, you don't have to be strong through the entire thing. It's okay to cry when you need to cry. It's okay to be held when you need to be held. But it's also okay to walk your own path as well. And to persevere and just advocate for yourself.
I love that. And I hope that those that are listening can really take something away from this segment today, because this is powerful. Your story is incredible, and just bless your heart for everything and for the babies. But thank you so much, Sara, for coming on today. And thank you for everybody tuning in. This is Taylor with Women's Wednesday signing off on America's Web Radio.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
If your health insurance